Welcome on in here to WagerTalk Extra. We got a little one play for you. Well, a double play from our man Trigger, but he is our only guest. And with the breakdowns we get from our man Trig, that's all you're going to need to get you ready in KBO action. He's got a series breakdown and a best bet coming your way. So without any further ado, let's welcome in Adam Trigger joining me on today's edition of WagerTalk Extra. Trig, let's start it off with the Lotte Giants, the Kiwoom Heroes. How are you looking to bet this series as we head on into the weekend set? Dear God.
Yeah, so this is an interesting series, and I don't know who I'm going to bet on yet, Dan, but I know what I'm looking for. And so when we do a series breakdown like this, I always try to pick a series that, there's a couple things I'm looking for that could generate a play. Now, just off the top, I'm not particularly high on either of these teams. I think both of them, I think Kiwoom probably stays near the bottom of the league. They come into play, I believe, in ninth place. They lost 7 straight games prior to the break. I think Lotte probably trends downward in the respect that I think they're in like 4th or 5th. Right, they're in that 4th, 5th spot right now. But I don't know if this team is good enough to make the playoffs. Now, there are some notable changes here for both teams, and this will happen at the All-Star break, so I think it's important to start there. Both teams changed multiple import players. Addison Russell is now no longer with Kiwoom. He's been battling a couple of different injuries. They ultimately decided to go in a different direction. They bring in Ronnie Dawson, who's like an indie league type. I think he was in the Atlantic League, and now he's going to come in and take the import spot for Kiwoom. But Lotte, I think, improved themselves with the import player because they go out and get Nico Goodrum. He was at AAA Worcester in the Red Sox organization, actually having a pretty good season. And I think he came over to take Zach Reck's spot because Lotte's, they've got more money to pay their players right now, it seems, than Kiwoom does. And I think that he knows that there's a potential, opportunity to stay with Lotte going into next season. They had paid Zach Rex $1 million coming into this year. He ended up getting hurt. So I think that's the appeal there. The reason I say that is Nico Goodrum right now, former Tiger, is a guy that, probably could have been back in the majors with the Red Sox if a spot opened up this year. He had been playing great at AAA, and he was someone that probably could be on a big league club or at least hanging around there in AAA. And now he's on the Lotte Giants. I think he definitely is going to help them more than Kiwoom's import player will help them. And I think Nico Goodrum's going to be in the lineup here in this series because of the time that he had got when he got over to Korea, which was over a week ago. So just off the top, look for Goodrum in the lineup. I mean, if he's in the lineup, I think that's an instant boost to Lotte. And as far as how I want to bet this series, so in game 1, I would have liked to try to maybe play on Lotte with Charlie Barnes on the mound because Kiwoom doesn't hit lefties particularly well. However, I'm not dying to go against Woo Jin-an, who's one of the best starters in the league. He's going to be the guy starting the game for Kiwoom on Friday. He's on his way to Major League Baseball, Dan, as soon as he's sort of done with his commitment of time he has to stay in Korea. He will likely be on a big league baseball team. So he's not necessarily someone I want to bet against. It kind of took me off of this game for Friday. However, you've got 2 of the worst bullpens in the league right here. And also 2 that aren't particularly deep. So what I'm going to be looking for in this series is this. I'm going to be looking at bullpen usage. Who wins Friday's game? Do they have to burn high leverage relievers in doing so? If that's the case, I'm going to want to go the other way. Now, I don't know how either team is going to stack up their pitching the rest of the way. But on the Kiwoom side, it's likely going to be Ariel Jurado and then Ian McKinney. Jurado is the guy I would want to potentially play on. I don't hate the idea of going with McKinney because I thought he was due for a good start, but he was surprisingly poor against KT prior to the break. But I'd be more sort of willing to play against McKinney than Jurado. On the other side, it's probably going to be Siwoon Park, who I really like for Lotte. Had a very good first half, and he's someone I would absolutely want to back if everything else shook out in the way I wanted it to. I'm not sure what Lotte will do with their third pitcher, so they replaced Dan Straley over the break, which means the third pitcher this weekend is probably not going to be Aaron Wilkinson, who they signed to be their import starter. My guess is it takes him a little bit longer to get over to Korea and ready to start. If you do see Wilkinson in there, that's the new import guy. He was most recently in the A's organization with the Las Vegas Aviators. He's now going to be the import starter for the Giants. But my guess is he probably gets pushed off until next week, and they go with one of their lesser starters in that maybe on Sunday. I guess Park would probably pitch Saturday. So Kiwoom Park is the one I would want to back here if everything else sort of plays out correctly. But if bullpen usage becomes an issue, neither of these bullpens are deep, and I'd absolutely be able to play. I'd be willing to play against one of these teams if they get stuck in a spot where they really don't have the high leverage bullpen arms, to get them home. So I don't have like an exact play here. Again, we could see Park versus Jurado tomorrow. But again, like I think I'd be more if let's say that's the case. Let's say Saturday's game is Kiwoom Park for Lotte, Ariel Jurado for Kiwoom, and Kiwoom wins this game, and then suddenly they win a close game and they burn through a couple of their better relievers. I'd probably be willing to back Park there, and certainly if it's Park versus McKinney, I would give Lotte the advantage there. So that's just kind of how I'm looking at the series. I think both of these teams could be play against teams starting right out of the gate, and there probably is going to be a chance to fade one of these teams in this series. If I forced out a lean for Friday's game, I maybe would say Woojin on just because Kiwoom lost 7 straight games into the break. I have to imagine that there's a sense of urgency there for the Heroes coming off a 7-game losing streak into the All-Star break. But that's just kind of how I'm looking at this series. I thought the info was pertinent. There's a lot of moving parts and changes for both of these teams, and it's really something that you're going to want to keep in mind if you're betting on both these teams going into the second half of the season.
Great breakdown, not just for this series, but moving forward. And then a little forced lean from our man, Adam Trigger. You want his KBO plays. They probably will be up by the time you see this video, so check it out over at his page, wt.buzz/AT. You also have a best bet here for the folks so they can get a play before they head on over to your page. What are you looking at in KBO action going tomorrow morning?
Yeah, Dan. So listen, we've had 8 days off. I was on a really good run, and I've been on a great run in baseball, MLB and KBO, but I think I had like 6-1 or something going into the All-Star break. So I've been looking at these teams, these matchups for the last week or so, and I'm not going to hold back. Usually I'm a lower volume guy, but in this scenario, there's 3 games I love on Friday's card. I played all 3 of them. So there's I have 3 4% plays in KBO. There's only 5 games, so that's kind of rare for me, but I just didn't want to leave any of the 3 off. So I'm going to give you one of them on the show for free. The other 2 I'm going to put in the same package. So you're going to have the other 2 are going to be up for $9 as part of the same package. And I'll have 3 client 4% best bets in KBO on Friday morning. So high volume morning for me on Friday. So one of the best bets is going to be the Kia Tigers. They are a slight underdog in this game, I believe, plus 105. And they'll probably stay there, given the fact that they're facing a Doosan team that's won 9 straight games. But just like I just talked about with Kiwoom having lost 7 in a row, remember, we just had a week off. So everyone just had a week off, the All-Star break, chance to regroup for some teams. And unfortunately for Doosan, maybe a chance to cool them off a little bit because they had won 9 in a row. But now, of course, players leave, go do the All-Star thing, go home, take some time off, and now they're going to have to sort of get that momentum back going that they had before the break. They've got the guy on the mound that they would want to do that in Raul Alcantara, 2.03 ERA, 0.94 WHIP. He's been one of the best pitchers in the league so far this year, but he hasn't always fared well off of extended rest, and that's what he's getting here. He's only had a week off between starts one other time this season. It was one of his worst starts of the season. And I think his numbers against Kia are slightly deceiving. He kind of shut them down in 2 starts, but that was a Kia lineup that didn't have Sungbum Na, Do Young Kim. Both were out. And that's really the story with Kia. Kia was missing multiple, 2 or 3 of their best players for most of the first half. And so they get those guys back prior, maybe maybe about 2 to 3 weeks before the All-Star break. Unsurprisingly, Kia has been better since those guys have been back in the lineup. And now Kia comes out of the break in full strength. And another thing Kia did right prior to the break, which was somewhat unexpected to me, was went and got rid of both of their import pitchers. So I think the writing was on the wall with Medina, Adonis Medina. He had not been pitching well. I think we saw a move coming there. But they got rid of Sean Anderson, who had been pretty good. And that tells me that Kia, I think their management thinks this team is for real. They thought the pitching was holding them back a little bit, and they went out and got 2 new guys, one of which is going to make the start here in Mario Sanchez. So Mario Sanchez, I did a little research on because I wasn't as familiar with him. And the reason for that is probably because he never really made it to the big leagues. But this is a guy that has pretty good AAA numbers. He's 28 years old, so he's kind of right in the prime of his career. Sub-4 ERA in his time in the minors. And it was surprising to me after kind of doing a little bit of research on him that he didn't end up with a big league club this year, like in a big league organization, because for the Twins last year, he was pretty good. Pretty solid season at St. Paul for St. Paul Saints. That's the AAA team for Minnesota. And he ended up back in Venezuela, which is his home country, prior to this year, which I guess I'm not really entirely sure why. After a quick stint in Venezuela, he goes over to Taiwan, where he was dominating that league. He was leading the league in ERA by the time Kia made the move to get him and bring him over to Korea a couple weeks ago. They threw him right into the fire. So I thought they might have held him off on making a start till post All-Star break, but they didn't. And he made a start last week, the week before the break, was outstanding. 6.1 innings. I think he gave up 1 solo homer in the game. Was just dominant. 10 strikeouts. Really looked good. So he's a guy that I definitely am going to want to play on. I think there's some unknown with him as far as the market is concerned. But what I've seen and just based on some of the stuff he did in the minors and what he was doing in Taiwan earlier this year has me pretty optimistic about Mario Sanchez. So in this case, like if he can just out-duel Alcantara here, I still like both these bullpens are rested, but Kia's got some really tough guys at the front end of that bullpen that I like. And I'm all in on Kia right now. I really like this team. I think they're going to make or break my second half in KBO because I'm that high on them now that they have their full complement of players back. So plus money here on Sanchez. I don't think we're going to see it that many more times because I think the odds makers will catch on to how good this guy is. And I'm going to roll the dice. I'm going to go against Alcantara, who's the going to be the clear favorite here, and Doosan will probably be the public side. But I like the Kia Tigers. I think they're just a better team. I think Sanchez is unknown. It's going to really help them. And I like Kia to figure out Alcantara now, seeing him for the 3rd time this year with their full lineup. So Kia plus 105, 4% play for me. It's one of 3 4%ers for me on Friday morning.
I love it. A little free 4%er, and you can grab the other ones over at Adam Trigger's page, wt.buzz/AT. Check him out there, and don't forget, he's pretty darn good at capping football as well. Football season right around the corner here. That's going to do it for us here. Big thanks to Trig getting us ready to go for some KBO action. We'll be back locked and loaded next week. Until then, don't go anywhere. You can check out WagerTalk today and get ready for today's MLB slate right here on WagerTalk TV.